What's going on, guys? So today we're going to be installing the cylinder head on the Prius. I don't know if you've seen the last video, we lapped the valves. If not, you should check that one out. But today we're just going to be doing a little gasket cleaning where the front cover mounts, and then we'll be throwing the head on and then pretty much just reassembling everything. So first off, I'm going to just do some cleaning. I need to clean the top and the bottom of this cam tower assembly, and then I'm going to change the spark plug tube seals, change that, the valve cover gasket. The cylinder head's all clean from when we did the rebuild on that, when we were doing the valves and everything. Need to clean the front cover up, all the gasket off of that, so that'll get all cleaned. Now that we got everything cleaned out, we need to bring the piston back up to top dead center cylinder 1. So I've done that. So now we can just do a last clean on this with some brake clean. Now we got the block wiped off with some brake clean. We've wiped off the cylinder head. So now you want to have some oil and a paint pen, because we're going to oil the threads, and then the washer to create so there's no binding. And then we'll put FIPG down right here. Over here, put the cylinder head down, and then, or put the gasket down, and then put some more FIPG, and then the cylinder head, and then we can torque the bolts. And here's the torque sequence. It's a 36 foot-pound, then a 90 degree, and then a 45. So go ahead and do that. Now that you have your first sequence done, you want to clean the oil off just the tip of the head here, and then put a paint mark on the same side, so it'd be like here, and then here, here. So when you go to do your 90, you can, if you're not sure, you can keep track by where your paint mark is pointing, and you'll do that to all the head bolts. Now we got the paint marks on there. So our first one will be a 90. So we'll go through all of them and do a 90, which will point them out towards the back, towards the transmission. And then we'll do our 45, which will point them all towards, coming out towards maybe the inverter area on all of them. All right, we did our 90 and our 45. So now they're all pointing off of that direction. If you go through and do your 90 and then do your 45 and it looks like you go back and one doesn't quite look like you went 45 degrees, you can go ahead and just tighten it down a little bit more, but just don't loosen them. You always just want to go a little bit tighter if you need to. I'm going to go ahead and hook up this radiator hose. We'll hook this one up here, this wire, and then we'll hook this hose up, and then after that we can put our lifters, our valve stem caps on, and our rockers. And after we get that on, then we can clean this and then clean the cam tower assembly, and then put that on and torque that down. So we're going to do our final wipe down up here on the top of the cylinder head. Make sure all your lifters are all on their right correctly, not off sideways. And we'll flip this over, we'll put the FIPG on the bottom side of this, but when you're going to install it, you want to make sure your time marks, so that's your time mark there. So if you flip this over, there's another one there, but see how that doesn't go past that line like that one does? So that's your actual mark right there, and that's going to get pointed right at that little valley, right where that, between where the bolt is and where it rises up. So just aim it for right there. And then for your exhaust, it's right there, and just point that one up. They might rotate around a little bit as you put them on, but just get them close. So we'll go ahead and clean and then put some FIPG on there and install it. Here's a sequence for the cam tower when doing the 12s. It's 20 foot-pounds, and there's the order right there. So we got the top of the head cleaned off. So we'll apply the FIPG to this, and you're just going to go around the outside of each bolt, and then you want to make sure you go around the outside of this bolt here and go across, because if you go in here, there's a chance it'll get into this oil jacket, and that's what feeds your lifters. So it'll actually be coming around here, and that's where that other one is. So you want the FIPG to come around like that. So this is clean, so I'm gonna go ahead and install the FIPG here, and then I'll install the cam tower, and then I'll go ahead and torque all the bolts down to 20 foot-pounds. Now we got the cam tower installed. We're gonna clean off where we did the head gasket, where the FIPG squirted out there, and then right there, we'll clean that off, and then when we do the front cover, we'll reapply FIPG to every one of those spots. So any place that there's a mounting surface where you can see a line, so there, and then down lower here where it meets the upper oil pan, where it meets there, you'll also put a line there at FIPG. So I'm gonna go ahead and install that EGR cooler assembly, get that done and out of the way, and then I'll move over and put the chain and guides and then front cover on. Okay, I finally got the EGR pipe back on, all the bolts, nuts, and the hoses. I recommend doing it the way I took it off, is just pull this nut and stud out, and then pull this out with the exhaust manifold and the cylinder head, pull it all together, because it's kind of a pain in the butt to get the stud back in down there. I guess you could leave the stud in and pull both the studs out where it mounts to the exhaust manifold, but by just taking this out and this nut, the only thing hard about doing it that way is getting this hose clamp. But I'd rather struggle with one little hose clamp right there that's not even that hard than all the rest of that. Now that the EGR pipe's back in, I'm gonna go ahead and put the guides and chain all back in, and then I can install the front cover. When installing the chain, the double one is going to go on your intake cam, just drape right over that. Then the single will go on your exhaust, and the yellow will go on your crank. And the crank dot is right there, so just go over that dot. Just change the crank seal out. Now we're gonna do our last cleaning on this, and then we'll add the FIPG here, and we're just gonna go down and on the inside of all these holes all the way around, loop around this way and go around that back way. And then on the water pump side, you want to go around like this on the inside. But I like to, just for safety on all these holes, after I go do my main bead, I like to just do a little wipe around each one of these, just to help prevent any leaks. And then you'll also do FIPG around this, and then there's two O-rings that will be on the cylinder head side that are made up right here. That's where those two O-rings are, so we'll replace those. Clean this side, and then like I said, right before we go back on, we'll apply FIPG to all these mating surfaces. And then there's one more lower. So I like to dry fit the cover without any FIPG on. I'll just slide in here, make sure I have the engine jacked up at the right angle, just so I'm not wiping any of the FIPG off when I actually go together. So I'm going to dry fit it, and then after that I'm going to double check, make sure all my timing marks are on, and then I will go over to the cover and put the FIPG all on that, and then come over here, put the FIPG on the mating surfaces, and then I'll slide the front cover in and torque it down. So I got the cover on, I just got the bolts set there, I haven't torqued them yet. I like to install these 3 bolts just a little ways. These are for the motor mount, but that helps prevent the FIPG blocking off the threads. So when it dries, it won't block it. So I got those in and started, but now I like to just take my tensioner, and to compress your tensioner, you'll push right on this tab with a screwdriver, and then you can push down, and once you have it pushed down, this little locking collar will lock on there and hold that in place, and then we'll change the gasket. But I like to get I want to get the tensioner in, and so the chain's taut, and then I'll put the crank pulley on and I'll do 1 revolution and make sure that's all good before I go through and torque everything. To release the tensioner, I'll usually, I don't know if you guys can see that, right behind that guide down there is the tensioner. And so what I'll do is I'll use a long screwdriver and push on the tensioner push on the guide towards the tensioner. And a lot of times I'll relieve that clip. But if not, you can just kind of slowly rotate the crank, and when it brings that tension of the chain up on there, then it'll pop off. Okay, so I put the cover on, and now I rotated it 2 different times around. You can see the lower mark there is on the 0. And then up here, you can see that one goes right into that valley. And then that one's just pretty much straight up with the top of that cam cap. So we're good. So now I'm going to go ahead and torque all the front cover bolts. Here's the torque sequence and torque specs for all those bolts on the front cover. Now that the cover's torqued back down, we can install our motor mount. And then after the motor mount, we'll install the valve cover and then the intake manifold and coolant lines. So I got the motor mount all back in. I've got the coolant lines for the throttle body hooked back up. I'm going to hook up this thermostat housing, and then I'm going to go underneath and bolt up the exhaust, the 2 bolts down there and the 1 bracket bolt, and I'll come up and do the intake manifold. Alright, pretty much got everything back together. I just have to go underneath and plug in the last couple electrical connectors for the AF and the crank sensor. So I'll go down and do that, and then I'll put some coolant in. On this Prius, it has this little bleed right here, so as you're filling up over there, open this till coolant comes out, and then you can shut that off. And then just run the car, and then also need to put oil in it, and then all we need to do after that is make sure it runs. Okay, got coolant in it. Now I'm just going to go back and hook up the 12-volt battery and the hybrid battery, and then we'll go ahead and start it up. There you go, now it's running. So I'm gonna leave the cowl off. I'm gonna go out and pressure wash the engine bay off, get any this debris out of here, just clean it up a little bit. And then I'll come back in and put the cowl on, and then do a good test drive just to make sure it's running good. Everything's driving good, cruise is fine down the highway. Decided this would be a good spot to pull off and let you guys know that everything's working fine. Hopefully this series is helpful. Thanks for watching.